The motor vessel Curranulla, A True Ferry Tale. This is part of the story of the MV Curranulla, lovingly told by some of those who have worked on her. A ferry service between Cronulla and Bundeena has been operating since 1915. The MV Curranulla has been travelling back and forth since 1939 and is Australia's oldest commuter ferry operating to a timetable. She was constructed in 1939 by Balmain shipwrights Morrison and Sinclair and continues today to carry passengers through river, bay and open sea along the shoreline of Australia's oldest Royal National Park, originally home to the Dharawal people of the Eora Nation. The old wooden ferry and the service it offers are adored by the community and tourists, but arguably it is most loved and appreciated by those who know her stories and served as skippers and deckhands.
The Currunulla is still running all those years by the original owner of the ferry service. He commissioned it and it's still going. It's just mind-boggling. And it's so nice to see an old-style wooden ferry, a living, breathing thing still operating. It's an absolute treasure to Sydney and to Australia that we've still got things like that going instead of these ugly aluminium or steel fast ferries that make a hell of a racket and disturb the waterway.
Oh, I think I'm a bit of a tragic, yeah. I love the look of them. I've got paintings on the wall and I've done my own paintings. And, if I go around other places in the world, I've been in New York City and Hong Kong, and I'll just go and find the nearest ferry and go for a run across the harbour. The good thing is, I'm not the only one. There's quite a few around. Yeah, and there's quite a lot of closet ones as well that remember everything, love it, but they're sort of a bit more quiet about it. But there's plenty of them. I guess for myself, one of the big things was passion for the ferries and maritime. I told my nan, told her when I was 3 years old, she told me that I was going to drive the ferry. I think it's just something I was born with, I think. I'm the first mariner in the family. I think it was just one of those things, I guess, was meant to be for me, and I'm doing it today. And I think the ferries stand out because you can enjoy the boat, environment, picturesque sort of view, and then there's the boat itself. I'm sure there's a lot of people that love their job, but I love going to work.
The MV Curranulla was purpose-built for challenging conditions.
The Currunulla is a comparatively shallow draft and it's got that beautiful, what we call a canoe stern, so that in a following sea, it's not being pushed. You can actually part the wave and surf with the wave or just ride harmlessly over the back of it. And it's a beautiful boat. It's a testament to how well it was built and the fact that all these years later it's still running and running well. There's no reason why it couldn't run for a long time yet.
The ferry service also inspires appreciation of a different kind.
Not being a chick magnet, it's just one of those things working from day one. First day I was there, the proposition, it's like everything. When you're new and you don't want to offend people and all, trying your best not to upset people, how can I say it? She wasn't my cup of tea, but the thought was there. It's just one of those things. Ladies seem to love seafarers, and we certainly had no shortage of female admirers, which was a new experience. Not a wholly unpleasant one. Can't explain why, but I've seen young fellas coming through as well, and it's been exactly the same for them.
Sometimes effort and assistance are appreciated, and sometimes they aren't.
She got to know everybody that was on the ferry, and I can remember one day I was on the deck and I had the rope on the wharf and it was low tide. The bottom landing over there, it was really slippery and treacherous in those days. People were getting on, and this old guy came down the wharf. He always used to wear a suit and a hat, and he just went straight off the end of the wharf, slipped straight into the water. I just let go of the rope and jumped in and grabbed him, got him up, and we got him out of the water. And I always remember his hat was just floating on the surface and he was under the water. Everyone helped him up, and then I reached up for someone to give me a hand and they all just forgot about me. So I had to climb up over all these oyster-covered piles and I ripped my hand to shreds. Got back on the ferry and we went back to Cronulla, and I went around collecting all the tickets soaking wet with a hand dripping blood. And this old guy, he just never got over that. Every time he saw me in this thick English accent, he'd say, "This guy saved my life." And he'd cross the street to come and thank me. It was lovely. That interaction with people was terrific.
Sort of blokes holding a rope in one hand and trying to help you off with the other. I mean, there's only so much you can do. So majority of people, again, understood and accept. But I had one lady, she obviously had a phobia, because where we tie up at Cronulla, you're on a floating pontoon, and there'd be a gap half an inch wide, and she'd hesitate in the gangway about stepping over that Bundeena. It was a little bit more challenging, and particularly as it was moving and all the rest of it. And I think I got told that I was worse than her ex-husband at one point in time, but we got her off.
We've rescued a few people over the years. I remember a yacht, he couldn't make it up. He'd lost his engine and he couldn't make it up the channel against the nor'easter. I picked him up with a rope and towed him out of the channel, and he loved me forever and a day after that. Every time I went near him, he'd start throwing cans of beer at it, to the horror of all the passengers on board. Boats today, you just get on board and check your oil and turn a key and away it goes. In those days, that was a hand start when I first started there. Being diesel, you can't hand start a diesel, it's just way too hard. So what we had was a pre-combustion system that worked off petrol. I used to love watching Heck. He'd get in there and he'd put a series of spark plugs into these little pre-combustion chambers on the top of each cylinder. He'd attach a belt, a leather belt to the flywheel going across to a magneto, and then leads come off the magneto onto the spark plugs, and then there's little valves on the side of these pre-combustion chambers, and then he had a can like an old fly spray can that he'd fill up with petrol, and he'd push this against the valve and give each one a squirt of petrol, and then there was just an open bowl carburettor at the end, and he'd squirt a bit of ether into that. Then you'd open decompression gear on top of the diesel cylinders so that they were open, and then he and I'd get on the crank handle and we'd start turning this thing over, getting it going as fast as we could. It would fire on the petrol. No timing to it, so it would make the weirdest noise, and of course it was limited because you only had a small amount of petrol in there. But the idea was to get this huge flywheel turning over, and the kinetic energy in the flywheel will keep it spinning, and once it's spinning enough, you throw the decompression gear over, and in theory it should fire on the diesel. And then you wind everything off. You had to flick this leather belt off while it was spinning at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then take all your spark plugs out and the leads off. It was just terrific to watch. When it was cold, it was great, but trying to do that when it was hot, there was so much compression in the engine, it really took the two of us to turn this flywheel over. But it was great fun to watch. That was in a glassed-in engine room in the centre of the boat, doing it at lunchtime. You'd have all the people standing around watching, and because my job during the day, there was stacks of brass fittings on this engine, green engine, beautiful, and I used to polish all the brass, so it was all sparkling and green, and a lovely sight, and great cheer came up from the crowd when we get this rotten thing going. It used to take quite a few goes when it was hot to get it running, and I'm fortunate that I was part of that, because you don't see that anymore. The only place you see that is in museum.
I know Captain Robert Ryle was the founder. He started the ferry service. He had a little ferry called the Morrison. All I really know about that is he started in 1915. Where that vessel came from, I don't know. It's getting harder and harder now to try and track that type of information, what powered it, and that I don't know if it was petrol or kerosene or diesel or what it was. He, as far as I know, sold out in the mid-1940s, around 1946, because he did bring the Bundeena online, which was the largest ferry to ever work on port hacking. He sold out to Cliff Mallam, who ran the ferries till about 1965. That was then Jack Gowan, who then sold out to Harry and Len. That would have been in about, Harry and Len would have taken them on in about 1975. They sold in about 1981, 82. Harry Brain and Len Whitehurst. So they sold out to Richard Patchett and Andrew Curran, 81, 82, and then Andrew bought Richard out, and in about 1984, maybe 1985, and Andrew owned them on his own until Carl purchased them in August 89, and Carl has still got them today. Carl's the one that's really stayed at Currunulla. That's why she's able to still carry out a full workload today at 76 years old.
In 1989 we took over, and so I've done, 26 years. Yeah, it's a great lifestyle business, and yeah, you certainly run public transport, you never get rich quick or anything like that, but definitely it's a great lifestyle. I wouldn't have stayed 26 years if I didn't, and I joke I'd have to get a real job if I left. Any job working on the water is a great job. The people aspect of this make the job as well, and I enjoy the passengers and the company of the people and all the enjoyment you get from joking with the regulars and things like that. So yeah, it's that part of the job I like as much as anything.
Carl Rogan, the current owner, has restored and maintains the MV Curranulla superbly. But while the public has always been very safe, previous owners sometimes didn't bother with little luxuries.
Jack was the owner. He was a real character. It's hard to describe Jack. He's very casual and very laid back. Didn't do a lot of maintenance on the boats. They were always a mess. He employed a guy to paint the ferry, but he only ever painted one side, because that was the side the people saw when they came down to get on the ferry. Who does that? that was bizarre. It was hilarious. On the Currunulla on a rainy day, the passengers would sit inside with umbrellas up because the rain would come through the roof. Oh, it was shocking.
Parking, ferry style, can be challenging.
I remember when I got my ticket and everything was going fine, I was having a ball, and I thought, here I am, the captain of the ferry. One day the wind just came up really strong from the west. I just could not get the ferry into the wharf at Cronulla on the last ferry of the day because the wind was blowing me off the wharf. So here I am with this screaming westerly, and I'm knocking it in neutral, and because the wind just kept blowing me sideways. And after about 3 attempts, and everyone's getting really agitated because they wanted to get off the ferry, I just said to the deckhand, I said, right, we're getting in this time no matter what. So I didn't knock it into neutral, and I came into the wharf way too fast, but at least I held it on line. And it took ages to go astern and much longer for the propeller to bite. By this time, the bow of the ferry is already ploughing into the steps that used to come down in front of the ferry wharf, and steps were flying everywhere. But we got in. The deckhand nearly burned all the skin off his hands, but we got there.
What are we doing right now?
We're about to park at Bundeena. I'm going to try and make it look graceful, otherwise it's called a crash.
The trip across the Hacking is one of the world's prettiest, but weather conditions can be dangerous and terrifying. Over the years, boathouses and ramps have been wiped out, and during one storm, a billiard table was seen floating in the bay.
It's remarkable how bad it can be. Once you clear Gunnamatta Bay, you've got to cross almost open sea. The Hacking River, which is only a small, quite narrow, shallow river, opens quite widely at Gunnamatta Point, swings across to, on the southern side, goes across to Bonnyvale and around to Bundeena, and the northern side follows the South Cronulla Peninsula, and quite a wide expanse, and then that opens straight into Bait Bay, straight out to the ocean. If the swell comes from the right direction, it just comes straight into the ferry wharf at Bundeena and straight into the mouth of the river. There are plenty of occasions where it has. The swell has been bad enough to go down into Gunnamatta Bay, and I've seen, I think it was 1974, when we had a cyclone come down the coast. But I was on that day, I was with an old Fijian deckhand, old Joe Kingdom, beautiful man. He died on the ferry, actually had a heart attack on the deck of the ferry. But he was quite an old guy, but a great deckhand. We were going over to Bundeena, first ferry in the morning, and I knew it was going to be rough because the forecast was terrible. Pitch black, and we got out of the Gunnamatta Channel, and there was just white foam floating on the water everywhere, and I thought, this doesn't look good. I made a fairly tight turn, and we always kept in close there in big sea. The swell used to go more to the south. And it was eerily calm, jet black morning, and white foam everywhere. And then suddenly this great big wave just stood up in front of me and started breaking at the top. I got over that one, and I looked around, and Joe had jumped out of the wheelhouse, and he's sitting on there was no one on the ferry. He's sitting on the front seat, and I said, what the hell are you doing? And he said, I'm taking my shoes off, I'm ready to swim. I said, get back up here. And we got round the point, and I ended up going right into Salmon Hall, as close as I dare, in the dark, and I turned around and went back to Cronulla. We didn't run for a week. Shocking. The waves would have been easy, probably 3 metres high. Scary, yes, and I was pretty young and inexperienced at the time. I was 25, yeah. I can't see there ever not being a ferry service. They'll never build a bridge.
The MV Curranulla provides more than a ferry ride. Over many years and miles, the service has bridged the geographical gap that once divided two communities. Yet more significantly, it has connected individuals through love and friendship. It is a true fairy tale.
Young and old, all shapes and all sizes, they all come to Bundeena. It's a beautiful place and it's a beautiful ferry. Come and catch the ferry.
Thank you Carl, Jeff, Rob, Muzz and Matt. Produced by His Story, Her Story, Retell, Record, Retain, 2016. The complete oral histories are in Sutherland Shire Library. This project has been assisted by funds allocated to the Royal Australian Historical Society through the Heritage Branch of the New South Wales Office of Environment and Heritage.